در اینجا باید از یکی از پرکارترین که واقعا افتخار دوستیشون رو در همین چند سال اخیر پیدا کردم. حتی باید یاد کنم از شب گذشته که تا ساعت 11 دیشب اینجا بودیم و ایشون کمک کردند به اینکه این کارهای فنی سریعتر و بهتر انجام بشه. از دکتر آریا خوشخو. دکتر خوشخو عضو کمیته های هماهنگی و اجرایی و همچنین عضو گروه های پژوهشی اجتماعی و فناوری ققنوس بودند. دکتر خوشخو یک مدیر ارشد بسیار توانا و با تجربه است که سابقه درخشانی در پژوهش‌های دانشگاهی و موفقیت در توسعه کسب و کار دارند. او دارای مدرک کارشناسی در رشته علوم کامپیوتر، کارشناسی ارشد در مهندسی نرم افزار و دکترا در رشته مهندسی ریسک و قابل اطمینان از دانشگاه مریلند است. همچنین او دانشیار مدعو در دانشگاه مریلند نیز هستند. از ایشان دعوت میکنم تشریف بیاورند پای پودیوم.
Okay, good morning. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Do we have my screen? Okay. So I think this was a good transition to switch the program to the English. Thank you, first of all, for joining us on your Saturday. It is truly a privilege to be here and present the first presentation, which covers the result of two of our most recent surveys. The first one is on understanding social priorities. This is a survey that we did in February 2025. And the second survey is actually a study which is on the government's emergency management and response plan. Is the audio? Very good. So the second one is actually a study that we did on the government's emergency management and response plan after the 12-day war. When we do this kind of surveys, we often get asked the question, what it is that we are presenting. Are we presenting results from our follower base, or is it a result from the public opinion from people inside Iran? So I think this is an opportunity to present both of them. So the first survey, which is under understanding social priorities, is basically the reflection of our follower base. And when we do that kind of survey, we have basically three goals for this. The first goal is to understand better who engages with us. The second reason for that is we want to understand what our follower base believe in, and also we use this kind of survey to understand what are the things that we do well and what are the areas for improvement. I lost the screen, I think. Let me click here. There you go. The second survey that I'm going to discuss after this is actually a study, and that does in fact reflect the opinion of Iranian people. Okay, so let's start with the first survey. And when we look at the basic overall statistics, we had from close to 35,000 viewers who actually saw our survey, over 12,000 completed it, which is quite an accomplishment. And from those close to 13,000 people, 9,000 were actually from inside of Iran. One thing that we do, we keep track of the number of participations over the years. And when you look at this chart, it shows how we've grown over the years. When we initially started with our surveys, we were under 4,000 participants. Now, the last one that we are presenting here, we have close to 13,000 participants. So this is quite an accomplishment. And where that number comes from is that we see a large increase in the number of women participation in our surveys. Back in 2019, the percentage of women participation was slightly over 20%. As you can see in the last survey that we did, we have close to 40% women participating in our survey. We also obviously track various demographics. Age is one of them. What we do is when we receive the results, we look at to see how different age groups think about our performance. So that's definitely an important demographics. We also track to see where people participate. And as you can see, close to 75% of the participants in our surveys come from Iran. That is quite a large number, an accomplishment. And I think this goes because we do cater to Iranians inside Iran. Our website publishes both in English and Farsi. As you saw, we started this presentation Farsi, so we do definitely cater to Iranians inside of Iran. Another accomplishment is that we do get responses from every province in Iran. Okay, and the numbers are significant enough that we can make studies from every province of Iran. So that is quite an outreach, given that internet, it may not be accessible everywhere in Iran the same way. So that's quite an accomplishment. We have a large educated population that participates in our surveys. This is important because, as I said, when we look at the data, we look at it how people perceive our efforts. And the same way we do it by age, we also do it by education. So this is also an important demographics. And then we go into survey questions. We want to see how public, or not public, our followers think about important topics is important for Iran. One of the questions that we asked in our last survey, not the last survey, this survey that we did in February, which had 33 questions, something like, how do you think the maximum pressure, for example, is helping with the negotiation between Islamic Republic and the United States? And while this may look very uncertain, this is very evenly divided. When we break it into different demographics, you see interesting findings that will help us make sure that our followers get the messages or involved with important topics. Another important question that we ask is always, we want to know, our follower base covers diverse opinions about who the leader wants to be. I think people may think because this think tank was the idea of Prince Reza Pahlavi, but when you see our follower base, we actually have different mindsets that follow us. We have people who don't support anyone, or we have people who believe in someone inside Iran or someone outside Iran needs to be the lead for the transition. Even though Shahzadeh is 88% of our followers, what is important is we want to make sure that we do get other mindsets also in here, because when we do studies, we want to make sure that everybody is represented based on what we see in Iran. Okay, if we think, everybody thinks this the same way we do, we are missing those populations. So this shows that we have followers that have different mindsets. And then once you dig into these numbers, you find interesting things. For example, one of the questions that we ask, who do you trust to support the transition? and when we look at the people who think someone from inside Iran, you can see that even within those population, 64%, they are supporting neither reformists nor conservatives. So even those people have moved on from both reformist and conservative parties. So you start finding very interesting that covers vast majority of ideas. The other question that we often ask is how do they see the contribution of diaspora have helped so far to improve the future of Iran? And again, this is something that we follow to make sure that the follower base covers all different mindsets. You know, many things that our performance have been neutral. This is, again, not just ققنوس. This is the diaspora outside Iran. Some people think that diaspora has not done enough. So these are important questions that we ask. And finally, I think I want to close this survey with one of the questions that we do ask. As I said, it's very important for us to make sure how our follower base perceives our performance. How much do they trust? And as you can see, over number 5, so this is basically complete trust is 5, and then 4 is trust. So over 70%, they either have moderate trust or complete trust to Phoenix Project of Iran, which is quite an accomplishment. So this is the last slide in this presentation. As I said, this presentation was only conducted to understand what our follower base thinks about us. The second survey I want to show, Dr. Zandi, is that in the email I need to open? So the second survey, I call this a study.
Excuse me, before you proceed to the second survey, can I bring up a question?
Yes, so I think the way the plan is, I'm going to present both, and then we're going to have a QA session that you can ask questions for both of them. So this one is actually, as I said, it's a study that we did right after the 12-day war, from August 5th to August 15th. And I think this is a significant study because it addresses an urgent need for us to get accurate data, independent data from Iran, from inside of Iran. Let me scroll down. So we had 5 main objectives for this survey. First, we wanted to assess the government's response during the crisis. We also wanted to measure the level of support of the Iranians for who they think can support them or help them best during a crisis. We also wanted to understand people's attitude towards the foreign policies, such as specifically towards the Israel's operation. Okay, and then we also wanted to know who Iranians believe should be their future leader. And then the most important objective of this survey is to assess the emergency response and management plan that we developed for the first 100 days. And that's important because we have been working on that for 3 years now. We had a workshop that we discussed with our peers. Now, this was the proof of really if we had implemented our emergency management response plan, how effective it would have been. Okay, so this gave us a chance to really ask people what it is that they needed, what did the government not do right, and what are the things that we need to improve in our 100 days emergency management and response plan. So those were the objectives. Let me see if I can scroll down. Oh, there you go. So why is this study important? To be short, this is not important for scholars, but I think the finding of this study can help policymakers, advocates, and anyone who's interested in Iran to make informed decisions. So, and a study like this is very hard to find because, as you know, the national polling is not independent in Iran, and then a lot of things that you see is controlled by the government. So to start with the overview, again, in this survey, keep in mind this was done right after the 12-day war. We had close to 6,000 views. Over 2,000 completed the survey. Just remember the situation, the internet was interrupted, people did not have access to internet, many people have moved from Tehran. So despite all those factors, we did get enough samples in this survey that we could actually make stratification so we can do this study. Again, we do follow the demographics by gender, by age. And the presentation I'm showing you is the report that will be published. So a lot of these reports, there's a lot of text. This is meant to be published. So I'm just covering this report for you. We do get, again, responses from every province, from rural areas and urban areas. But when it comes to Iran, the biggest challenge that we have is not with bias due to age or gender or geographical location. The biggest bias that we get in our surveys is due to many of these responses come from our follower base. So they think like us. So we need to be able to somehow stratify our results so we account for that. And as you saw in the first survey, 90% have the same mindset as we do. So we need to find a way to do that. We were specifically designing this study because right at the same time, there was a survey published in Iran that asked a question that we used to stratify our results based on their published data. It was published in a news agency, which we referenced here, that asked a question. So we reference it here as question 33, which says, what is your demand regarding the government of Iran? So based on so just keep in mind, this is published in Iran by a news agency. So they, so their numbers, we have to look at it based on that assumption. 6% of them expressed no opinion. 26% of them, they said they don't want to get involved into politics. They just want to improve their lives. 23% of them, they supported reform. Just remember, this is supporting reform, not the reformists, because I don't know if there are still many reformists left in Iran, but this is their opinion. And they still said that close to 50% of them, they wanted a complete departure from the Islamic Republic. Okay? So based on that assumption, we compared that with our sample that we collect. And when you look at the chart on the right-hand side, the target population is what they published, and the sample proportion is our follower base. As you can see, there are certain mindsets that could be underrepresented in our sample. And there are other mindsets that could be overrepresented in our mindset. For example, in our sample, 90% believe in complete departure. I don't really think, I think 90% is way too high. This is almost 100%, okay? So that is not a accurate representation in Iran. So assuming what they published represent, we looked at some key numbers. So this is again another representation of our sample versus what was published. On the left is our population. You see 96% majority. The other one is more diverse. So then we started asking certain questions. How did the government and responsible institution provide sufficient and timely information about the missile attacks? So even with the weighted responses, almost 80% thought it was inadequate. The next question, for example, we ask is how trustworthy were the official sources, the government media and news agencies? In our sample, we had 90%, which was probably overrepresented. So when we looked at the weighted percentages, still close to 70%, they had no trust. Actually, if you add these up, low trust and low trust is close to 80%. So some of these findings we use because communication, for example, was one of the one of the 6 areas that we discussed during our 100 days emergency management and response plan. So the next question that we ask is, during the crisis, which source did you use? And so one thing that shows that you can trust these numbers is when it comes to, for example, certain questions, the numbers are very, what's in our sample is very close to what our weighted numbers are. The next question that we asked was, do you have any positive view of Israel's military operations against the Islamic Republic? So the majority, if you look at it, it's over 50% had either a positive view or had somewhat positive view. But again, there are individuals in Iran that may have had a negative view or no opinion on that. The next question we asked, do you think such attacks can lead to regime change in Iran? Majority say yes, or, it depends on the condition. The other question was, how would you handle opposite views? And the majority, as you can see, they are willing to, they rather engage in dialogue than fight or do the violent option. But perhaps one of the important questions is, how do you see the fate of the Islamic Republic within a year? As you can see, even with that assumption, close to 50% believe that it will end within a year. So, in conclusion, just want to say that we do continue to do this kind of surveys, especially this last survey or study. I think is very critical because we are able to reflect on the public opinion inside Iran, and the report will be published after this conference. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer now. Thank you.